I think by the time I actually get done editing and putting together what I'm about to say, it should come out to about like at least 8 or 7 minutes, maybe 5, because I don't want to take up too much of you guys' time, but I do want to upload something. I ain't gonna lie. And plus, I low-key just came across a little mini revelation. I don't think overthinking is just overthinking. I think a lot of the time it's your subconscious realizing that there are gaps within your experiences, gaps in what you lived through, gaps in what you understand, or just what you haven't fully processed yet. And when your brain doesn't have the experience to close those gaps, it doesn't move on. It loops. People treat overthinking like it's a flaw, like your brain is trying to just be dramatic or just annoying for no reason, but your mind just doesn't obsess over nothing. It circles things when something still doesn't make sense. And yet people still love to quote, "For as much wisdom there is much sorrow." And while that might be true and all and everything like that, I'm not discrediting anything, but I don't think that saying just ends there. Because ignorance has a cost too. It just shows up differently. When you don't understand something, that lack of understanding doesn't disappear. You just don't have the language for it yet. So it turns into constant overthinking. So wisdom might bring sorrow, but ignorance also brings emotional depth. I think it's a signal of your brain saying that there's something that you don't fully understand yet, but you know it matters. You get what I'm saying? It's pattern recognition without enough pieces to actually finish the picture. And don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that everyone needs to be aware of everything because that would just be unrealistic. But I do think when someone is just overthinking, there's just usually something that is unresolved underneath it. Something unprocessed. So instead of asking, how do I stop overthinking? I think the better question might be, what experience or understanding am I actually missing? This idea connects really clearly when you start talking about trauma, especially with kids. Kids are defined by having gaps in their experiences because they haven't lived long enough to actually fully understand long-term consequences. So when a kid makes a decision, it usually feels rational to them, not because it objectively is, but because given what they know, it makes sense. And then they get punished for it, so that punishment sticks, because now learning is mixed with fear and confusion. They didn't just learn what they were doing got interpreted as wrong, they also learned that something that they thought made sense caused pain. And that's where trauma could start forming. To me though, I honestly think that traumatization is kind of inevitable. Not in the sense that everyone just goes through extreme trauma or anything like that, but in the sense that trauma exists on a spectrum, and it's subjective. Trauma isn't just about what happens to you, it's about whether your brain can process it at the time. And kids, as we know, have fewer tools to process things. So even in situations adults sees as normal discipline, it still can have lasting effects depending on severity, the environment, and interpretation. On the higher end of severity, something like a kid getting their ass whipped has been shown to cause increased aggression and just poor moral internalization. But the lower severity punishments aren't harmless either. Taking away a kid's belongings, something many people see as mild, can still cause emotional distress and damage the parent-child relationship. So my point is, whether the punishment is big or small, it can still be traumatic. Not always, and it's not guaranteed, but it is possible. And what complicates this is that trauma is kind of relative in a way. A kid who grows up having their shit getting taken away might see getting your ass whipped as a light punishment, while a kid who grows up getting their ass whipped might see losing their stuff as nothing. Neither perspective is wrong. Their environment determines what feels severe and what feels normal. Trauma isn't measured by the act itself, it's measured by how the nervous system interprets it. But no matter the method, one thing stays consistent. The child is being punished for a decision that they believed was rational, and now they're learning through punishment instead of understanding. That moment gets burnt into memory not just as a lesson but as an emotional reference point. That's why punishment sticks. That's why trauma sticks, and that's why overthinking sticks, because it's not just about pain. It's about confusion mixed up with learning. It's your brain saying that something didn't add up and you didn't have the tools to understand why. And when that happens early in life, it doesn't disappear. It just follows you. That's why telling someone to just stop overthinking, that's just not going to help at all. You're asking their brain to drop a survival strategy without giving it understanding in return. Overthinking isn't the problem, it's the symptom. So when I hear someone say that they overthink a lot, I don't really hear weakness. I hear someone who knows something doesn't fully make sense yet and refuses to ignore that feeling. And honestly, that feels more honest than pretending that everything is fine. Because growth doesn't come from shutting your mind off. It comes from understanding why it won't shut up in the first place.